everybody, today we're going to make the Fluttering Butterfly Accent Pillow from the Cottage Garden Bella box. The instructions for this project are on page 17. I already have everything prepped. I've cut my fabric. We need fusible on the front fabric. We're using organza, wash away stabilizer, wash away topping, there's project batting, fusible backing, light mesh cutaway stabilizer, and iridescent mylar. There's a few other items listed here. We'll go through this all step by step. We're going to start with part 1. It's a 4-part project. Part 1 is in a 5x7 hoop. We're going to make the dimensional butterflies. The embroidery thread colors are listed here. I've already pulled my threads. I'll call out the thread colors as we work through the project. I only have glide white. I have different threads, so I'll make sure to point out what I'm using and what's called for. You'll notice there's symbols here showing the little bobbin. That means they want you to match the bottom thread to the top thread. My machine only likes a 90 weight thread in the bobbin. I don't have the adjustable bobbin case. I've already made a dimensional butterfly and a dimensional dragonfly. I have a video for how to make the plant pokes. I did not match the bobbin thread, so on the back you can see the white thread. I'll call out the color changes, but I will not be changing my bobbin thread. You don't really see the underneath side of the wings. I don't think it's going to be an issue. We're going to start by putting some wash away stabilizer in a 5x7 hoop. Let's head over to the machine. I'm on a Baby Lock Meridian. My files are on USB. We want to load our Fluttering Butterfly Part A embroidery file. Let's go ahead and find that. It's the one that looks like this. It's got 2 peach butterflies, 2 purple, and then kind of a mint green facing sideways and a wing. Let's go ahead and load that. We hit set and embroidery. The first color we're working with is coral. It says to match the bobbin thread to the top thread. I'm not going to match any of the bobbin threads, but I'll go ahead and call that out as we work through the project. Here's the color I'm using for coral. I'm using sim threads today, except for glide white. You're getting both birds in the background today as well. We're going to go ahead and stitch out the wings 2 placement lines. Once that's stitched out, you should have 3 layers of, they're calling it the wings 2 organza. This is the apricot organza that came in the Bella box. So you want to lay them down, covering all of this stitching. So you've got 3 of them, 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to put down paper tape. I would say top, bottom, and both sides. I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera because the tape dispenser makes a lot of noise. I've got my tape on all sides. We're going to go ahead and stitch the tack down lines. I did have a thread break. I think it was right here where that sharp corner is. At this point, you can take off the tape, and it tells you to apply a fray preventative product, something like Dritz Fray Check. I use that on the plant pokes. But since I'm filming, I'm going to go straight through and we'll keep going. If you have the fray preventative and you want to stop, you want to go ahead and apply it right along the thread lines. And then you have to wait for it to dry before you can do the next step, which is going to be trimming along these stitch lines, because you can't trim on the stitch lines if that fray preventative is wet. I'm going to go ahead and trim and we'll keep going. Got these trimmed. Without the fray check, it is going to fray. You can see there's some fuzzies around here, and I've got little bits of organza all over the hoop and all over my pants. I'm going to be getting a lint roller. Let's go ahead and put this back on the machine. We're going to stitch the large wings 2 mesh and satin outlines. So it's going to stitch this one, and then the next step is the small wings 2 mesh and satin outline. They're 2 separate steps. They're both in the color coral. Coral is on your bobbin if you're matching your threads. I'm going to go ahead and run both of those steps together. Those have all stitched out. Let's get a look at them since I didn't use the fray check. Oh, they look fine. There's a little bit of fuzzy sticking out. You can see it right there, kind of along the side. I am perfectly fine with that. The fray check will help prevent that. Can you see the little bit sticking out like here and here on the side? So if that bothers you, use the fray check. If it doesn't bother you, don't use the fray check. We're going to switch to the color lilac, and we're going to stitch out the wings 5 placement lines, and you want to switch your bobbin thread. If you're matching your bobbin thread to your top thread, make sure you switch that out. You want to grab the 3 layers of the Wings 5 organza. It's the lilac organza, the one that has a purple tint to it. I'm going to put down all 3 layers. Make sure you completely cover the lines, and then we'll add our tape and stitch the tack down. Again, just a reminder, if you're matching your bobbin thread, make sure you're keeping an eye on which color you've got in your bobbin. All taped into place, we're going to go ahead and stitch the tack down. Remove the tape. If you want to put your fray preventative on, put that on around the edges and let it dry, and then you'll trim after that. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing that I did on the one above. I'm going to just go ahead and trim without the fray preventative. I've got that trimmed. I got too close to the stitch line. The top layer has popped out. Hopefully that'll get caught when we do all of our outlines. What we're going to stitch out next are the large Wings 5 lower mesh and satin outline, and then the same thing on the small. It's in the color lilac. It's going to be the bottom half of both of these butterflies. They're 2 steps. I'll go ahead and run those 2 steps together. The bottom detail has stitched out. I'm getting quite a few thread breaks, and I seem to remember that happening when I did the plant pokes. There's something about all of these little tight angles and turns that my machine just doesn't care for. I'm not going at full speed either. We're going to switch to the color Raven. I picked this color. It's a darker purple, and we're going to stitch out the large Wings 5 upper mesh and satin outline and lower dots, and then the small Wings 5 upper mesh and satin outline. If you're matching your bobbin thread to your top thread, make sure to match your bobbin thread. The purple butterflies are all stitched out. We're going to switch to the color Pistachio. If you're switching your bobbin thread, match your bobbin thread to your top thread. We're going to stitch the placement lines for Wings 4. Wings 4 is the meadow organza, so we want to place these down and tape them just like we did before. We've got 3 layers. Once you've got that taped into place, you can go ahead and stitch the tack down. Same thing as before. If you're going to add that fray preventative, go ahead and add that to the stitching lines. Let that dry. Once it's dry, you can trim. I'm just going to take the tape off and go ahead and trim all 3 layers. The next 2 steps are in Pistachio. The large Wings 4 mesh and satin outline, and then the small Wings 4 mesh. I'm going to go ahead and run those 2 steps together. I'm going to pause here for a moment. I'm having repeated thread breaks with this pattern. You know, every time it switches and swaps back and goes in another direction, there's something about this pattern that it doesn't like. So I'm actually going to stitch the rest of this off camera. I'm going to pull my hoop off, look at my machine, check my needle, check my bobbin, and check everything. I don't think it's my machine. I think it's just this pattern. This is done. The mesh design on this wing looks to be a little bit different, so we'll see how that stitches out. It doesn't like this one either. I'm going to go ahead and finish stitching this off camera. This is done. I got through that the same way, starting and stopping. It broke a few more times. We're going to switch to the color white. We're going to stitch out the small Wings 4 detail and satin outline. If you've matched your bobbin thread to your top thread, make sure you change back to your regular bobbin thread since we're using the color white. That stitched out great. Absolutely no problems. The last couple steps are in white. We've got some right Wings 2 detail and some Wings dot detail. Looks like that'll be on this one here and this one. They're 2 separate steps on your embroidery machine. I'm going to go ahead and run them together. It's all in white. All stitched out, and thankfully it's stitched out without jump threads. What you can do now is take your project out of the hoop, trim around your butterflies. You can leave a little bit extra. There's a picture on page 20 if you want to look at that. And then you want to dissolve your water-soluble stabilizer. I like to do that in a bowl. I do not do this in the sink because when it dissolves it gets a little sticky and I don't want that going down the pipes. So a little bowl full with some cool water. Let it sit about 15 to 20 seconds and then feel it. If it's sticky, there's still some stabilizer there. Once all the stabilizer's gone, it doesn't feel sticky anymore. And then just lay each of the pieces flat to dry. A couple layers of paper towel or a nice clean dish towel works. I'm going to go ahead and do that all off camera. We're going to move on to part 2, stitching the left side of the pillow front. You need to have fusible backing on the wrong side of your front fabric, light mesh cutaway in a 5x7 hoop, and we're building this left side and right side. If you're good with embroidery software or you have a machine with a larger hoop, I think you can actually combine these two parts and stitch it out all at once, which would probably make it a little bit easier. But I'm going to stitch this out according to the instructions, so we're going to use the 5x7 hoop. Let's go ahead and bring up the Fluttering Butterfly Part B. Let's find that file. It looks like this. It's got the purple down in the lower corner, the 2 green, and then a purple body right there. So that's the one that I want. Go ahead and hit set and embroidery. We're going to stitch out the crosshairs. I've got white thread, white bobbin thread, light mesh cutaway, and a 5x7 hoop. Got a tray table next to me. We're going to be working on that. We're going to start with our batting. They're calling it the base project batting. It says to lay it flat on flat surface. Check. We need to get our front fabric, which has fusible on the back, and double check, make sure you've got it fabric side up. Sometimes it's hard to tell with light colored fabrics. So I've got my fabric side up. We're going to place the front fabric right side up. It says centered exactly on top of the batting. I'm going to do this kind of backwards. I have it fusible side up. I need to see what I'm doing. If I try to place it on top of the batting, I'm not going to be able to see the batting because it's a layer of fabric and a layer of fusible. It says to center it. If you want to center it exactly, you're going to need a ruler. That looks exact enough to me. Now I can go ahead and flip it over. It says to fold the stack of batting and fabric in half with the fabric right sides together and to finger press along the fold. They're calling that fold A. I'm going to grab the right hand side. I'm just going to hold this down. I'm going to bring the fabric over first, line that up, press, and then I'm going to bring my batting over and make sure everything is touching. That looks good, and bring that over and press. So you should be looking at your batting and the back side of your front fabric that has the fusible. This is fold A. We're going to fold it in half again. They're folding it up. I'm going to bring this up, and it says to be sure your batting is centered in the stack. I'm going to turn it so you can see. You can match your corners as you're folding it up. Like that. Matching that. Matching these corners. It actually goes together pretty easily. More complicated than it sounds. So now I have fold A, flip up, make sure I realign that, fold B, and you just want to press it so you've got some lines. I'm going to grab my paper tape, slide it over. We need to get our hoop. You've got your crosshairs right here. Here's our folded stack. Fold A, fold B, line it up right here in the upper left quadrant. I'm going to line it up like this. Make sure that's in place. I'm thinking this might be easier with a sticky back stabilizer, then you wouldn't have to worry about anything sliding. Just a thought. And then we're going to fold it down. It tells us to unfold the stack and tape the fabric in place. If necessary, use rolled tape on the hoop frame. I have a big piece of tape here. So rolled tape is just doing this with your tape on the hoop frame. There's some rolled tape on the hoop frame. You know what? I have a few more pieces. Let's go ahead and put a few pieces down. Got the tape in place, and now we're going to unfold, and you've got a crosshair line here, and I can see my fold line here. Nice and straight, and I only want this layer of batting and this layer of fabric. I'm going to pull that over straight, and then press it down onto that rolled tape. Anchor that to the frame, and then let's see. I can add one more here to the bottom and make sure that gets attached to the frame right there. It's not going to go anywhere. You could also add some rolled tape over here if you like. I was just looking at the picture, so you can grab another piece of tape, make a tape roll, add that there. It's not going anywhere at this point. It's taped, taped, and taped. You should have your white thread on your machine. We're going to stitch the background quilting detail. I would sit and watch it, seeing as it's kind of just setting on top of the rolled tape. You don't want your fabric to shift, so keep an eye on it. Let's stitch our quilting. The quilting stitched out, that looks really nice. We're going to switch to the color lilac, and we're going to stitch out the butterfly 1 placement line. You should have a piece of mylar for this. We want to place that over the stitch line, tape it in place. Got my tape around it on all sides like it shows in the instructions. We're going to stitch out the mesh and the satin outline. No thread breaks at all for that. We can go ahead and remove the tape, and then the mylar should just tear away. I'll probably do it at the same time. Yep, just like that. Go ahead and slide that back on. We're going to stitch the butterfly 1 body fill and antenna detail. That came out great. We still have the color lilac on our machine. We're going to stitch the butterfly 4 antenna detail and then the butterfly 4 wings placement line. It's 2 steps. I'm going to go ahead and run them together. We're going to use this to line up some of the butterfly wings. It has us starting with the large pistachio colored wing, lining it up exactly like that. It says to go ahead and add tape. I'm just going to add a small piece because we're going to be adding the small wing on top of that, and then I can add a larger piece. Here's your smaller wing, lining it up. It actually centers. You've got satin stitching here and here, and there's a small bit that's open, and this little wing fits right inside the open area of the satin stitching. I'm going to grab a larger piece of tape. We want to hold both of those down, and it says to get your wash away topping. Let me grab that. Here's the wash away topping. You don't have to have it completely smooth. You just want to make sure you've got everything covered. We're going to add some tape to hold that into place. We've got all of that taped into place. I'm going to slide this back onto my machine. We're going to stitch a tack down and a body fill. I don't think mine tacked down. It said to line it up on the straight edge, and I did, and I think you need to line it up a little bit over. Let's have a look. It barely caught right there. So when you line these up, make sure it's on that line. I had it lined up right next to the line. I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and leave it, and you can take away your wash away topping, tear it off, peel it off. And then before I put the pillow together, I'm going to take some of that fray preventative. I'll do that when we're done with this panel, and I'm going to put it right here because all fray preventative is it's like a clear watery glue, and then that'll seal that little bit there. It's not going to pull off, but it's barely tacked down. I'm going to go and put that back on the machine. We're going to stitch out the butterfly 3 fills and details, and that's going to be in the color pistachio. So we need to go ahead and change to pistachio and then stitch that out. Once that's done, you're going to stitch out the butterfly 2 antenna detail and butterfly 2 wings placement line. They're 2 steps on your machine. I'll go ahead and run them together. Next, we're going to place our peach colored butterfly. It says large wings, tape, and then small wings. So we're going to center it like that. I'm going to do both at once. And then center that one. And I know this one's going to get tacked down because it's going to go down the middle. I've got that taped down, same as before. Grab that wash away, tape it into place. And once you've got that taped into place, we can stitch the tack down lines and the body fills. That one looks much better. That one went right down the middle. The wash away topping just peeled right off. You can take that off and remove all the tape. That's all the embroidery for this. The next thing we're going to stitch out are the Part B registration marks. It says to do that in a visible thread. I'm going to leave pistachio on. It's going to stitch some lines up here and then down here. It's going to help us move this and line it up for the next half of the pillow. I'm going to get this loosened, and let's get all of our tape off and get this out of the hoop. We can turn this to the back, and we're supposed to trim off the excess stabilizer. Once you've got the extra stabilizer trimmed, you want to reload your hoop with your light mesh cutaway. Let's go ahead and load our next file, part C. This is part C. It's got the little purple body, purple butterfly, and then the peach butterfly in the upper right. I still have the color pistachio on my machine, which is fine. It says to use a visible thread for this step. We're going to stitch out the part C registration marks. Got my hoop on a flat surface. You're going to need a couple of thumbtacks for this. If you don't have thumbtacks, a lapel pin will work. We're going to turn our hoop over to the back. It says to place a thumbtack exactly in the corner of each registration mark. So you've got your 2 registration marks. You want to grab a thumbtack. Here's one mark. It says to place the tack exactly in the corner. And then we want to add a piece of tape on top of that to hold it in place. Make sure you support your stabilizer. And let's get the other one that's on top. Find the corner, not poke our fingers. Put that down, grab a piece of tape, tape that into place, and then you're going to flip your hoop to the front. You need to make sure you're on a nice flat surface. The thumbtacks should be poking up. We're going to place our previously stitched piece, this piece, right side up, and you're looking at your registration marks here and here. And you're going to poke the thumbtack through the corners. And you might have to lift and look from the back. It's a little hard to do on camera. You want to get that through the corner. And you can kind of add a little pressure and feel where that tack is. That looks good right there before you poke it all the way through like that. And then we want to get the one on the bottom. You kind of have to hold everything and just be careful. Now I've got them both where they need to be. It says to tape the top right and bottom edges of the fabric in place outside the stitch area. If necessary, use rolled tape on the hoop frame. It looks like we're going to be stitching here. This is going to be our stitch area, so make sure that's nice and smooth. I had a little trouble getting the rolled tape off the batting, so I don't want to do that again. If I'm going to use rolled tape, it's just going to be on fabric, which works for this half of the project because your batting ends right there in the hoop. You've got your rolled tape, and then you can add additional tape like I did before, you know, top and bottom. Just kind of tape it right to the stabilizer, tape it right to the hoop, make sure it's on there. This feels pretty secure. That's all taped into place. Now we need to take the thumbtacks off. You got to take your tacks off before you start your embroidery, or you're going to scratch your machine and it's going to be a problem. So make sure you take off the thumbtacks. Make sure you're up to date on your tetanus shots. Everyone had a tetanus shot lately? Good. Try not to poke your fingers. There we go. I'm going to flip that back around to the front. And I'm going to take this little piece of rolled tape and put it right here and just hold that part of the project there. Even though that was batting, this is used tape. It'll be easy enough to get off. Make sure your thumbtacks are off. Everything's smooth. Everything's taped into place. Let's put this back on our machine. I make a pretty big mistake here. You should have white thread on your machine. I'm going to show you what I did. Do you see what I did? I think I'm going to have to pick that out. That's unfortunate. If you ever do anything like this, if you go to the back side and if you can pop some of the bobbin stitches, it'll make the front stitches come out easier. So like every 2 or 3 bobbin stitches, I'm just going to go along and pop these stitches, and then I'll flip it to the front and I'll show you on this section. The hardest part to get out is going to be the tack down knot. I'll have to fuss with that a little bit, but I'll do that off camera. So let's go to the front. Here's where I was picking the bobbin stitches. Going to grab that, pull, and then these should just start to come up. See how that just pops right up? It comes up nice and easy if you've pulled some of the bobbin stitches from the back, and then you don't have to worry about ruining your front fabric. I have the color white on my machine now. I did redo the whole thumbtack, line up, tape, everything. After I pulled out all the stitches, I took this over to the iron and I did a little bit of spray with water and then kind of gently ran the iron in circles, and that helps get rid of the holes from the previous stitching. White thread on your machine and stitch out the background quilting. Now we're going to switch to the color coral. We're going to stitch the placement line for butterfly 7. Grab your mylar, cover the placement line, make sure you've got it taped in place, and then we're going to stitch out the butterfly 7 wings, mesh, and satin outlines. We can remove the tape and tear away the mylar. It should just peel right up. I'm going to slide that back on my machine. We're going to leave the color coral on, and we're going to stitch out the body fill and antenna details. We're going to switch to lilac, that's your lighter purple, and we're going to stitch out the butterfly 6 fills and details, and then the butterfly 5 antenna detail and butterfly 5 wings placement line. 3 separate steps. I'll go ahead and run them together. We've got our large and small butterfly wings. Large, center it right on that line, and then the small. You can tape the large and then put the small on and tape the small. I'm just going to tape them both at the same time. That seems to work okay for me. And then you want to cover it with the wash away topping, and then we'll stitch down the tack down lines and body fills. Once you've stitched that out, you can go ahead and remove the tape and remove the wash away topping. And I actually took a little break before that step. I put my fray check here to make sure that this would stay in place. Looks good. We're going to go ahead and take this over to our table and get this trimmed. We're ready to take this out of our hoop. Now I'm looking forward in the instructions, and we're going to trim to 8.5 inches square. We have to pick out these registration marks. So once you get off all the tape, you get everything out of the hoop. We can trim away the extra stabilizer from the back like we did before, and then you're going to need to pick out these registration marks. We're going to use our 8.5 inch orange pop ruler. I'm going to turn it toward me. It says visually center. So there's no lines because it didn't have that normal fabric tack down line because they did it as a 2-part project in a 5x7 hoop. So you just have to stare at it and make sure you've got it where you like it. Let's go ahead and cut. If you've never used the orange pop rulers before, there's a notch right here. Your blade goes in the notch as far over to the side as possible. If you're left-handed, you'll be cutting on the other side. Don't put your hand here. Watch for your fingers. You go all the way up into the notch at the top. Be very careful. If you don't have an orange pop ruler, you're trimming it to 8.5 inches square. You could mark on the outside, draw some lines. That's probably the easiest way to do it because you can't really put a ruler on top of this because of the detail. It would be really difficult to trim. Go all the way around. This is all trimmed. I'm going to set it aside for the moment. I've cut my side borders. The fabric is directional, and it does note that in the instructions. So your side borders go up and down, and then you'll have the longer borders, the top and bottom, and they're cut the other way because the fabric is directional. So here's the print. It does tell us to iron fusible on the wrong side of the short and long borders. I haven't done that yet, so I need to go put some fusible on the back side of all my borders. When I'm working with stuff that's really skinny like this, a lot of times I unroll the fusible. This is the Kimberbell fusible backing, and I'll lay down a piece. Here's the next long one. I think this is the next long one. And I'll leave a little gap in between so I'll be able to get in there and trim. Rather than cutting all the little skinny pieces, I'll leave a little bit of a gap. A little bit of a gap. Trim away the extra before I take this over to my iron. Now this is ready to go to the iron, and I can go ahead and iron this down and then trim out the extra. Got fusible on everything. Let's go ahead and grab our pillow front. We're going to start with the short borders. They're going to go on the sides. Make sure you've got them in the right direction. So butterfly facing up, butterflies facing up. Going to go right sides together, 1/4 inch seam. Sew this on our sewing machine with a straight stitch. I'll do that and bring it back and show you. Here it is from the back. I pressed out toward the borders. As you're sewing your 1/4 inch seam, you'll notice that the measurement that they have for the batting keeps the batting out of your seam, which was nice. Here it is from the front. My borders are slightly longer than the 8.5 inches. So I'm going to take my ruler, line it up across the top here, line up a line on my straight seam, make sure everything is straight, and we're going to cut off a little bit extra on the top and the bottom before we add our top and bottom borders. So you do that on that side and then on this side. Now I'm ready to add the top and the bottom borders. Same procedure, right sides together, 1/4 inch seam. Check your fabric, make sure everything is pointing in the right direction. You're not sewing it on upside down. I've got these sewn on. We're going to set this aside. You've got 2 pieces for the back. Now I've already done the double fold. It tells you to take the back piece, fold in about 1/4 inch, press on your iron, fold in about 1/4 inch and press. You do that to both. Once you've got that folded, you want to take it to your sewing machine and stitch a top stitch, which is just a fancy word for straight stitch. That's just going to hold that fold into place. I have my 2 back pieces and my pillow front. The way they show this in the instructions is 1 piece like this, right side down, and then the other piece, here's your fold, the other piece like this, right side down, and they have the opening running this direction. I like my openings running sideways, so I'm going to do mine a little bit differently. I'm going to put this one down here, and then this one down this way, and then that's going to give me the opening going sideways for my pillow form. It doesn't matter which way you do it, whichever way you like to. Another thing that I like to do, which I've talked about on some pillow videos before, is I like to sew on 1 piece at a time. I'll put 1 piece down, make sure all my sides are lined up. I want to take some extra care because this is a little crooked, and I'll sew this down, and I'll go back and forth here. And then once that piece is sewn down, I'll do the second piece. Same thing, back and forth, and I'll go all the way around, back and forth. You can do the whole thing all at once if you like. I just like to do half at a time. I'm going to go ahead and sew my backing on. I'll bring that back and show you. Here's the back of my pillow. You can see I've got some back and forth stitching there and there. I did 1 side at a time. Simple straight stitch. We're going to clip our corners. That's going to help reduce bulk when we turn this. So you can look and then trim just the littlest bit. Try not to cut your stitching. If you do, go back and restitch it. It's not a big deal. So go around and clip your corners. I've got the corners clipped. We're going to turn it right side out, and then we want to poke out the corners. We're going to be making a flange with this pillow, so I'm going to take a little bit of extra time working on the corners. I have a clover point turner. Be very careful. You don't want to accidentally poke a hole in it by being too aggressive with your point turner. I've got those probably as good as they're going to get. Now it tells us to use a pressing cloth and press the outside edges only. You don't want to run your iron over the mylar and the organza and melt it. The goal here is to try and get this pressed, not like that where you can see the back. Try and get it pressed nice and flat so all you're seeing is your border fabric. This is all turned and pressed. I pressed it and actually put my clappers on it. A clapper is a little wood pressing tool. I have several of these, and it just sits like that. It helps absorb the heat after you've pressed it and helps the seams lie flat. The next thing we're going to do is create our flange. You want to stitch right here. It's called stitch in the ditch. Right here all along the inside of your border, all the way around the pillow. I'm going to go ahead and stitch that out, and then I'll bring it out and show it to you. Here's what that looks like from the back. You can see my stitching. I have a beige thread on my machine, and then from the front, ideally it disappears into the seam. There are a couple of spots where it's a little bit off. Unless you get right up next to it or you watch this video, you're never going to see it. We're ready to put in our pillow form. Grab your Kimberbell pillow form from your Bella box and stuff your pillow. I've got that stuff. Let's go ahead and look at the front. This came out beautifully. The big thing I noticed is because I didn't use the fray check, I do have some little fuzzies of the mylar and the organza. Not all that worried about it. Thank you for joining me making the Fluttering Butterfly accent pillow. So far on my channel, we've made the plant pokes, the layered seam, the tote bag with the pocket on front, and a bonus project on the other side, and today we made the butterfly pillow. What's left out of the main designs is the jar topper, and in our bonus designs, there are 2 more designs for the jar topper. We use the watering can on the tote bag, and then we have the wildflower seeds design. I already did the dragonfly during the plant poke stitch out. Let me know if there's something in particular you'd like to see next. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your embroidery friends. Enjoy your Fluttering Butterfly accent pillow, and I'll see you soon with another Bella Box video. See you next time!